Hello, I'm going to discuss a project that we have been thinking of among our African partners about accessing a new prevention method that is called PrEP, and I'll be discussing the challenges we have to implement some of the needed studies to move forward on the use of PrEP. So, but before that, I'll give you a few words about Coalition Plus. It's a coalition of NGOs fighting an HIV/AIDS among in Francophone countries, and we together try to promote the community-based approach in the fight of HIV/AIDS. We try to multiply initiatives with national and international efforts to let the voice of people living with HIV and AIDS be heard. We provide technical and financial support to the members, and we share expertise and collaboration in different projects. We, the Secretariat of Coalition Plus runs 4 programs. One is research, one is advocacy, fundraising, and institutional support. The research program that is key in moving new topics and issues is been in place for the past 4 years, and we've been constructed collaboration between the NGOs and the research community to progress in and improve the actions against the fight against HIV in our daily actions. The program provides technical support and reinforces the members' capacity in research, and particularly in collaborating with local researchers. And we also try to promote the involvement of NGOs in research. So now I'm going to discuss one specific idea and project we have, and the issue about concerning use of new prevention methods has arise from our African members. In Morocco, ALCS started prevention programs for vulnerable groups, MSM and sex workers, in early 2000. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Burundi started a bit later in 2007, 2008. And that led to the creation of a platform to share experiences and address issues for access to prevention and care for MSM in Africa. And the platform is called Africa Gay contre le Sida. And the African NGOs have developed the usual prevention activities, that is education, access to condoms and lubricant, promoting access to HIV rapid testing, support and diagnosis and care of STIs. So they've done all this work, but they've come to the conclusion that among the cohorts of MSM and sex workers they work with, they still report new cases of infection of HIV. So the question for the African NGOs is: are we failing? Are we not doing enough? And if so, what could we do differently, or what could we offer? more. And that led Arcad-SIDA, particularly in Mali, which is a community-based NGO that care for more than 60% of the HIV-infected individual in Mali, to set up a clinic called Clinique de Nuit in Bamako, and the Clinique de Nuit specifically address the issue of care and prevention for sex workers and MSM, and it's open 6 days a week from 4 p.m. to midnight. And from the very beginning, Arcad-SIDA in that Clinique de Nuit wanted to develop new strategies to reduce vulnerability of the unaffected, and that is to discuss with the local authorities, increase use of antiretroviral in people with HIV, as known as TASP, treatment as prevention, make pre-exposure prophylaxis or PEP available, and also try to think about the use of PrEP. So I don't know if many of you are familiar with what is PrEP, but PrEP is the use of a dual combination of antiretroviral branded as Truvada in uninfected individuals. Many clinical studies were run in the late 2000, and that led the Food and Drug Administration in the US to approve the use of Truvada for prevention. Here are the few studies that led to this approval, and what the studies have shown is that PrEP works in preventing HIV infection. PrEP lowers the risk if people take it. So these are the studies, and you see on the bar that the higher you take the medicine, the lower you are at risk of being infected, and that if you don't take the medicine, PrEP won't work. So PrEP is like condoms. If you use it, it lowers the risk. If you don't use it, it's useless. So there's a true issue concerning this new prevention method. That is, how do we make it available, and how do we monitor adherence to this new strategy? So in July 2012, FDA approved Truvada for prevention, and WHO at the end of July 2012 issued a guidance on PrEP and recommended to implement demonstration project to make PrEP available in a setting where we can monitor and evaluate the limit or the success of this new prevention method. So it's not a guidance for extensive use or extensive availability of PrEP, but it's a guidance to recommend countries to develop demonstration projects, small programs, so that we monitor the uptake of PrEP among the most vulnerable to the HIV infection. So the international, the WHO, the FDA decision led the African NGOs with the question, how do we move forward in implementing demonstration project of PrEP? And but also with two other issues. One is TASP, and it's still difficult to be able to prescribe antiretroviral if people infected with HIV don't have CD4 cells below 350. And the availability of PEP in Africa is still very difficult because availability of friendly triple regimen in that indication is scarce. And here, to point out two regimens that are used in Africa is Triomune and Atripla, and these two regimens are not friendly for use in PEP because they have some adverse events that are very difficult to address in a short course of medication. And for PrEP, the question is about demonstration projects, is to open the access of this new strategy for those who are willing to think about using it. And for that, the PrEP has one particular requirement, is that when people use PrEP, they need to come back to the clinic regularly to have an HIV test and also to monitor adverse events of this medication. So in all of the MSM and sex worker clinics run in the African NGOs, this new service that allows or recommend to specific groups to attend the clinic on a regular basis, that is not to come once to be tested and then come again whenever you want, to move from this paradigm to another one, that is to recommend or to offer regular use of the service, that is STI screening, access to counseling, and also HIV testing. This new service also addresses a new question that has to do with confidentiality and anonymity. In all the programs run in the African NGOs, people attend the clinic to be tested or have their STI being taken care of on an anonymity basis. And if these organizations want to offer PrEP, they need to move from anonymity to confidentiality to be able to call the people if they don't come back to the clinic to see what happened to them. And the last but not least question is that it's about the community interest in using a new prevention method that is daily use of a medication. So we still don't know whether these communities, MSM in Africa and sex workers in Africa, the real world community, are interested or would be interested in using this new prevention method. So what would be the objective of demonstration project? It would be to describe the acceptance of daily PrEP among MSM and sex workers, to determine differences in acceptance of daily PrEP by socio-demographics, to determine differences in duration of PrEP use by socio-demographic, to describe adverse events and toxicity of PrEP, to describe patterns and correlates of adherence to PrEP, and to measure changes in sexual risk-taking behavior among participants in the PrEP demonstration project. So that's a lot of objectives and a lot of questions that need to be addressed. So my African colleagues are asking whether it's feasible for an NGO to run such a project. So the technical expertise is there with the research program, and the key with the link we have with some academic, but we have identified some key issues that need to be addressed. First one is the cost of running such a program. We've estimated that it would cost more than 1 million euros to run a demonstration project, 3 years, 6 sites, 500 volunteers. The local governments are scared that it will, at the end, rise the cost of the overall local HIV and AIDS program. If we start providing medication to the uninfected, it will increase costs. Is it ethical to make drugs available for uninfected individuals in countries where universal access is not yet there? And also, how do we monitor adherence? I haven't taken the time to address some of the studies that were run, but one key question in these studies is about adherence to daily PrEP, and all the studies have shown that self-reported adherence among volunteers is very high, but when we do blood plasma level of the medication, then you see a huge difference between what people declare as taking the drug and whether they do really take the drug. And the two studies that failed showing any efficacy, the self-reported adherence was 90%, and the overall adherence measured by plasma blood level was less than 30%. So for African NGOs, it questions access to blood level monitoring tests, and these tests are not available in African countries, so it will increase the cost because we would need to have these blood tested in Europe. And the question remains about the involvement of the communities in this endeavor. We know in Europe that, for instance, the MSM community is very reluctant in using PrEP and is not asking for access to PrEP. So the question still is there whether the uptake for these vulnerable groups will be important or not. So we've decided to move forward in a two-step strategy. The first step that we will start in September is to organize and evaluate a new service offering regular access to a package of prevention strategy, STI clinic, in the STI clinics for the vulnerable groups in 5 countries, France, Mali, Morocco, Burkina Faso, and Burundi, and start discussing new prevention strategies with the communities. And then if we demonstrate that MSM or sex workers are interested in attending the clinic on a regular basis, we will try to raise the money and start planning for a demonstration project. Thank you. But the conclusion is that the African NGOs are convinced that, nothing in terms of access to PrEP in Africa will happen if they don't move ahead and start planning. And to remind the audience, African NGOs were the first ones to prescribe antiretrovirals, and they were the first one to organize prevention programs for MSM and sex workers. Thank you.